Thanks very much to Rob and to Cairdeas for asking me to put together this roughly about 1 hour concert of music from the Doherty family. And so I suppose rather than just play a kind of a generic selection of the Doherty family's music, what we try to do here between myself and Rob is come up with tunes that reflect and represent the different members of the family. So some of those will be obvious and will be names that you'll be familiar with over the years. Of course, John Doherty himself and Mickey and Simon, and increasingly we know a lot more about Hugh and Charlie now as well. But there will be names in there as well that you maybe not be so familiar with. So we're going to try to play some tunes that we know came from Mickey Moore Doherty himself, from Simon, the kind of the grandfather of the family, and also then to find some tunes which represent probably the type of repertoire that would have been held by some of the other members of the family, by the likes of Annie, by Mary Doherty as well, some who were no doubt musical themselves, but for various reasons to do with the way that society worked at the time, never got an opportunity really to keep music on into adulthood. And then we're going to try to branch off from that and look at some of the other relations of the family who ended up in different places around the world. Thanks to Cairdeas. Hope you enjoy this selection, and I'm going to start off with one called The Spirits of Wine. Those are probably the two tunes that are most synonymous
for me with John Doherty's playing, because I really like the first two tunes that I came across of his music. The first track on the flute and bow, which is probably the commercial recording that most people know the best, and I would have heard those tunes played hundreds of times over the years at Glenfiddle and Glenties and so on, and probably first heard them play together by Paul O'Shaughnessy and Dermy Diamond and Martin McGinley probably as well at that time. And then over the years found my way back to the source material, and the first one's called The Spirits of Wine, which I haven't really been able to find anywhere else, and the second one is Doherty's version of the set dance Madame Bonaparte. So one of the unsung fiddlers of the Doherty family was Mary Doherty, who according to John was a very good fiddle player, who then never played again after she was married, as was unfortunately the kind of custom of the time. Great to see that that's definitely not the case anymore. So many brilliant young women fiddle players coming through these days, and really making the tradition so much stronger. So we don't really know what she played because she stopped so young and she was never collected, but can assume she played all the kind of family repertoire. So play a couple of tunes now for a bit of crack, which would have been in the family repertoire for a very functional thing. So when a couple was getting married, it was said that they would walk into the chapel to haste to the wedding, and then Tarawara Gajanta was played as they were coming out, because the bargain was made at that stage. So I'll give these a go as a kind of an example of the sort of tunes that Mary Doherty probably played with her father and her brothers. The next tune I'm going to play is Charlie Doherty's version of Wreckish Paddy, which he's supposed to have brought back from the States. So Charlie went off to America in the early 1920s. According to Mick Doherty over in Australia, he had potentially been in the trenches in World War I and come out and then got himself involved in the War of Independence, like a lot of people of his generation did, and had needed to get out of town, so went to the States in the 1930s, in the early 1920s, and had supposedly made a few pounds for himself as well. So Prohibition was a go at the time, of course, in the States, and so you can make your own conclusions as to how you might have made a few pounds at that point. But whatever, the depression came and so on, and Charlie made for home in the 1930s, and he died very tragically here in Belfast. But at some point he must have made connection with the family, because he was able to pass on this tune and a story. So I'm going to try and do a bit of technological wizardry here and get you the recording of John Doherty telling Charlie Doherty's story, The Yankee Farmer's Treasure.
This is a ghost story I've heard about America. And he was an Irish fella that was in America at the time. And he had been stranded, for work. It happened to be a bad time, and there was no... snow was heavy and deep on the ground, and the poor fella, he was about the cities, or some of the cities, and he got fed up knocking about the city all the time. So he took it his chance that he would go out, to the country for a change. And the snow wasn't too heavy on his leaving from the city, but as he went out further in the country, the snow became deeper. It fell heavier. So all he had to do was to go down and ask a Yankee farmer, could he put him up in any way. So of course it wasn't the rule for a Yankee farmer to keep or harbour any person, or especially a stranger he wouldn't know. But very good now. The Yankee farmer was a kind-hearted man after all. And well, my man, he says, I can. He says, I'll do my best for you. Under the conditions, he says, I know times is bad, he says, and snow is very heavy, and I'm thinking, he says, you'll not get back to the city now. But he says, I have a house down there. And he says, you can see it right down from my house now, he says, and it's a very good, comfortable house. But unfortunately, he says, my man, there's no person can occupy that house, because he says it's supposed to be a haunted place. And he says, any person that ever came there, they only waited for just a few hours and left again. He says, but under the conditions, I'll do the best I can for you. You can go on down to the house, he says, to the Irish fella, and you can stay there. And he says, we'll supply you with meals, he says, and a good bed, and a good fire, he says, and plenty of smokes and all the rest you want. That's all I can do for you. Kind enough, says the Irish fella. He went down to the house, and the Yankee farmer took down his supper, and some beer, I suppose, beers too. In that country they take beer, and some light drinks of beer, and plenty of smokes and good fire. So they fixed him comfortably at the bedside, or at the fireside, and I think it was on some sort of a bed, some sort of a bed suitable for one passenger. So the man was just partly going to sleep at about the hour of 12 o'clock, or say midnight, when there stepped in through the house 4 men carrying a coffin. And they left the coffin right down beside the poor Irish fellow where he lay, and turned on their heel and walked straight out again. So the man that was in the coffin, he sat in the coffin, and the Irish fellow just took a bit of courage to ask him a question or two. Well, now he says, my man, in God's name, I'm going to ask you, he says, who are ye, or what brought you in here? Well, the man in the coffin answered, he says, do you see them 4 men that carried me in here and walked out again? Yes, he said, did, surely. Well, them were the 4 men, he says, that murdered me in this house for my riches, he says. And after having murdered me, he says, they never got 1 penny of the riches that I possess. But seeing that you have, he says, the courage and the pluck of a man, he says, to stick out, to stay here, he says, this night, he says, and to witness what you have witnessed, he says, I'll show you where the riches, he says, is all concealed in the house, he says, and if you like, he says, you can get to work in the morning, he says, and hook for about 4 or 5 feet down at the spot where I'm going to point to you inside the house. And he says, you'll come on the treasure, and so sure as you do, he says, it's yours, I bequeath it to you, or I give it to you. And I bestow, he says, that riches to you. So, of course, the whole scene then, of course, as a ghostly scene, had disappeared. The poor Irish fellow stuck his ground until the morning clear, and the Yankee farmer come down. Well, he says, Irishman, how did you get along this night? Oh, he says, I got on well, I slept good. Well, had you had you any, did you happen to hear or see anything that upset you all night? Oh, I says, I saw lots to upset me. There's 4 men here, he says, come and carrying a coffin in here last night. Left it beside my bed, he says. And he says, I took my courage in my hands to ask the man, he says, in God's name, who he was or what brought them in here. So he told me, he says, that them were the 4 men, he says, that murdered him in this house for his riches, he says, and for his treasure, he says, and after having murdered him, he says, they couldn't find the place where the treasure was hidden. So he says, he pointed the spot to me where the treasure was hidden, he says, and he told me for to go and get busy and get tools and hook down for 3 or 4 or 5 feet in, that I would likely come on the treasure. Well, says the Yankee farmer, if you come on the treasure, I'll also bestow the treasure to you. But however, the poor Irish fellow went to work, and he come on the treasure, no doubt at the place where the man showed him, or the ghost man showed him, and after having gained the whole thing, the whole treasure, and all that the dead man bestowed him, he only lived 3 weeks to enjoy it. Now that's really a very true story, because that's a brother of my own that told me this story. He was acquainted with this Irish fellow that come through all this.
So dúirt na Doherty's Garushi Gilta and Peter Moore Tarlac Maxivnia. They said they were related to Tarlac Maxivnia, the great piper of Gweedore, and I know there's a lot of great research and work going into Maxivnia's life at the minute by Siad Friel and Cathal Curran up in Gweedore there. So it'd be great to see what comes of that, and I've had a look at some of the stuff they've been doing recently, and it's really interesting. They found some of his own handwritten manuscripts which he'd sent in for competitions, and newspaper articles about him from all over the world. So I really like this tune. So when myself and Danny Diamond put together that Pete Seeger John Doherty film a few years back, this is one of the tunes that he played at the start, which he just called McSweeney's Reel. So presuming that this represents that connection. there just to cap it off. It's kind of a similar tune to the first one. So one of the things I really like about that McSweeney's read that he plays at the start is that there's sort of a little bit of the end of the second part's cut off, so you end up back into the first part kind of sooner than you expected. And then the Flogger does that similar thing where it twists around the F sharp and the F natural, and I know that the Dohertys all would have played that tune as well, so I thought that was a nice pair. So I'm going to play this set now to acknowledge Annie Doherty, who was a sister of the big Doherty family of John and Mickey and Hugh and so on. And she had two sons, Teig and Hugh. And this Highland was played often by Vincent Campbell. It was recorded in his CD, The Purple Heather, the Cairdeas collection of his music, The Purple Heather. And it's just known as Hughie McGinley's hornpipe. And I might play after that the Swallow's Tail, which was known by all of the Dohertys and was recorded by Mickey Doherty for Alan Lomax, or for that great collection in, I think it was 1946, which became known as the Gravel Walk. So it was a double tape, cassette tape affair, which was re-released then recently by Cairdeas as well. So we'll give these a go. Hughie McGinley's Highland and the Swallow's Tail. Hughie McGinley's Highland, and then the the Swallow's Tail.
So I'm going to give these couple of tunes a go now. So these I think are associated probably with Mickey Moore Doherty. So two marches that kind of come from the piping tradition. The first one, John recorded for Peter Kennedy in 1953, and he kind of uses it to tell the story of Mickey Moore and John Mosey McGinley meeting for the first time, and they sort of recognized each other by reputation, and that famous line, "You can be no other man only." And so he supposedly played this tune the 1st of May, which is a type of a pipe march you don't really hear played very often. And then the one after would be more familiar to most people. It's the march from Welcome Home Grania. So the 1st of May and the march of Welcome Home Grania. So. So I'm going to play next a tune that is a kind of a simple sort of a family tune, which was called the Knockers of Nairn. So Nairn, as I understand it, is a place in the north of Scotland, but Nairn also then outside Cairdeas. is probably the location that they mapped this tune onto. So the sort of tune that probably Mary Doherty would have played, that all of the family would have had growing up. So John in his recordings kind of did some nice sort of slidey things in the second part with his first finger, that sort of thing, but kept it quite simple. So it's kind of like a single reel. It's hard to say exactly what type of tune it is, but and afterwards then I'll play the fairy reel. So a few years back when I was helping Kieran O'Mwany put together the research for his John Doherty film, I was in the UTV archives and stumbled upon this piece of footage that was marked as John Doherty, but it was actually Mickey. And as far as I understand it, it's the only piece of video footage of Mickey Doherty in existence. So he tells the story of the fiddler and the fairy, so the young fella who's going to the dance that can't really play the fiddle at all. And he comes across the wee red-haired man on the road who imbues his fiddle with all of the wealth of the tunes of the area, and he becomes the best, most famous fiddle player from where he was from. There's different versions of the story and different things happen at the end. So in one version that I heard, the fiddle bursts into a million pieces when he dies, but in this version of the story that the fiddle just hangs on the wall and the magic stays in it. So it's a nice story. So I'll play that because it's a really old reel as well that I would think that all the Dohertys would have had on all the fiddle players from the area, and another one that probably comes from Scotland originally. So the Knockers of Nairn and the fairy reel. Doherty had a bit of a mad ending, which is quite fun. And just left it there, but to finish it off for all of our own sanity. So that's the Knockers of Nairn and the fairy reel. So one of the musicians from the Doherty family that I don't know a whole lot about is Simon Doherty, who was Hugh's son. So the eldest, Hugh was the eldest brother of the kind of famous generation of the Doherty family, and his son Simon was born in 1915. His other son then was Mick, who ended up in Australia, and he only died very recently, and he left us a recording and a long interview talking about his family and the connections and so on there. So this was
Simon, and in his own words then he says, Simon says, I was just taught a couple of tunes by my father when I was young, from less to more, and then we used to go out to Cayley and Rake and a bit of sport and fun, and we'd play a turnabout, and we'd play sets, Lancers, Highlands and Germans. At that time I was only a boy, and the fun would start around Hallows Eve, and from then on through Christmas till it was a spring day. It was dark, and we used to put a candle into a small light we made out of tin we called lanterns, and that was the light we would use to take us over the top of the cairn from one place to the other. And Alan Feldman describes him in the Northern Fiddler as having a wild mountainy style of music. So there's one of the tunes that's transcribed in there that I really liked. It's a version of a common enough tune that many of us play called the Canamine Highland, but Simon's kind of own twist and reading of it is really interesting, so I'll give that a go. So that's the Canamine Highland, is played by Simon Doherty, son of Hugh Doherty, who was born in 1915. So Tamagiri waltzy Anish. I'm going to play a waltz now. This is known as Mickey McConnell's waltz, and so linked obviously with the uncle of the young Dohertys. He was based around in Glencollinkill, and I suppose probably most people know about the references to the McConnells in the composer Arnold Bax's memoirs now, where he referenced them as great fiddle players. There's not all that many kind of local people who are kind of like referenced in the book, but there are some of them. Yeah, the cool thing about this tune is I was recently watching the Ken Burns documentary series on country music, and this tune appears in it. There's a cowboy yodeler who's one of the kind of early country music stars, and he had the whole first part in the middle of a song in a yodel style, like. So I guess it's likely, you know, we can debate this both ways, like, but I guess it's likely that people heard records of this in the 30s or whatever and turned it into a waltz. But who knows, it could have gone the other way too and landed over from here. So but I really like this tune. I'm going to give a couple of marches a go here. So these are two that I've picked up from the recording of Mick Doherty, the son of Huey, who was based in Australia for most of his life. So the first one is the March of the Drunken Piper, which is very much his own version. It's missing the first beat of the bar, which I think is really cool. And then the second one, the Pretty Dark Haired Girl Dressed in Blue, which was recorded by some of the other Dohertys too, but Mick calls it Mickey Moore's March. So give these a go. So I'm going to try two tunes that I think probably would have been in the repertoire of Hugh Doherty and probably Charlie. They were definitely in John's repertoire. It's his recordings that we got these from. So anyone who's seen the documentary Fiddler on the Road, at the end there's this kind of lovely monologue-y sort of section where John is just talking about his life and so on. And he says, he's very specific, he says, in the year 1916 is when the big switch in terms of the tastes, musical tastes of the people happened. And he said, from that point on, people didn't want to dance to the old time stuff anymore, to the kind of barn dances and so on, and that they wanted all the new stuff that was coming from America. So to keep getting gigs and to keep being able to, you know, make a living from music, the Dohertys would have learned all this kind of new music that was coming around. So this sort of music that bands would have been playing, and they were making their own fiddle versions. And he says very clearly in the documentary, he says no traditional music at all. So it was just all the sort of new wave of music that was coming in. So they made their own sort of fiddle versions of it. And I think what happened originally was there would have been a mix of the two, and then eventually people's taste changed so much that it was just this, I don't know, one-step stuff, I think he describes it as. So I'll have a go at a couple of these tunes together. So one of the problems when you're trying to piece these together is there's maybe a little snippet on one recording and a snippet on another, and you're trying to piece them together to make something coherent, to make a tune out of them. So you might have played these slightly differently at times, and Mickey might have played these slightly differently at times, but this is kind of the way that they've come out for me. So Okay, so by magic I've got Cathal O'Curran and Shaw Young and Mulfarsha, and we're going to do some fiddle playing in octaves here now, so trying to take on the sound that Simon Doherty recorded on some of his recordings for Peter Kennedy, and we're going to play two of the tunes that he played on that recording, so the Heather Breeze and the Pigeon on the Gate, and I'll try to do these in the octaves the way the Doherty brothers would have done, so here we go. So I mentioned before and played a couple of tunes that reference Mickey Moore Doherty, but the sort of grand patriarch of the family was of course Old Simey, after whom the whole family was named. They got their moniker, and he's referenced in several tunes that the family held in their repertoire, and one of those is found on the Floating Bow, where John Doherty calls it the Old Simon's Hornpipe, which is probably better known to us these days as the Oak Tree. So I'm going to give this a go. So Simon was a piper himself, as well as a fiddle player, and obviously is one of the great points of origins for the whole family's musical tradition. So try to play this as best I can in kind of the style that John played it. Okay, so I'm going to finish off here now by playing a tune that will be familiar to many of us. There's a couple of different versions of it floating about, but this is the Doherty's version of the Glen to Carrick, which I think comes from a much older tune derived from sort of parts of different tunes over the years anyway. So probably the one we played the most commonly is the Jarrett's version, which is quite similar, but this is the one definitely that the Dohertys would have played, and I think it's on, John recorded it on that album that he made for Cultus in '68 or thereabouts. So give this a go. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the tunes. Hopefully this has helped to ease another week of lockdown anyway, and it'll not be too long before we're all together playing like the old days. Like so. Thanks again to Rab Gormayagov, Cairdeas agus Chief me Shiv níos maile. You know what?